The morning rush had faded into a slow hum at the Copper Fork, a cozy little diner tucked away in a quiet corner of Cincinnati, Ohio. Emily Carter, a 27-year-old waitress, adjusted her apron and wiped the counter as the lunchtime crowd trickled in. She had worked here for the past 5 years, balancing double shifts to support her mother and younger brother. Life hadn't been easy since her father passed away, leaving her as the sole provider for her family. Her routine was the same every day. Greet customers with a warm smile, take orders, deliver plates, and try to hide the exhaustion in her eyes. But today felt different, though she couldn't quite put her finger on why. At around 1:30 p.m., the chime of the diner's doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of a new customer. Emily glanced up and felt her breath hitch in her throat. Walking in, dressed in a crisp navy blue suit, was J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States. Her heart pounded. She had seen his face on TV countless times, especially since he had taken office under President Donald Trump. The diner had served local politicians before, but never someone this high profile. The entire place went silent for a moment before whispers spread among the customers. Some pulled out their phones to snap pictures, but Vance waved them off politely, signaling that he was here just as a regular person, not a politician. Emily took a deep breath and walked up to his table, pen and notepad in hand. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to the Copper Fork. What can I get you today?" Vance looked up, his blue eyes warm with a friendly glint. "Afternoon. I'll take a black coffee and your house special, whatever that is." Emily chuckled softly, relaxing a little. "That'd be our home-style meatloaf with garlic mashed potatoes. You okay with that?" "Sounds perfect," he said, handing back the menu without looking at it. She scribbled down his order and hurried back to the kitchen, her hands trembling slightly. The Vice President of the United States had just ordered her meatloaf. Emily tried to steady her hands as she poured a fresh cup of coffee and carefully placed it on Vice President Vance's table. She had served hundreds of customers over the years, but something about this moment felt surreal. "Here you go, sir," she said, her voice as steady as she could manage. Vance looked up from his phone and smiled. "Thank you, Emily." Her eyes widened slightly. You read my name tag." He chuckled. "That's what it's there for, isn't it?" He took a sip of his coffee and nodded approvingly. "Good stuff." Emily felt a strange sense of ease. He wasn't acting like a distant, untouchable politician. He seemed normal. "So," he said, setting down his cup, "has this place been around long?" Emily nodded. "Almost 20 years. My dad used to bring me here when I was a kid. I started working here right after high school." Vance raised an eyebrow. "You must really love the place." She hesitated. Love? It wasn't really about that. It was about survival. "It's a good job," she said simply. Vance seemed to notice the shift in her expression, but he didn't press. Instead, he glanced around the diner and smiled at a group of elderly regulars in the corner booth. "I like places like this. Feels real, you know?" Emily did know. The Copper Fork was the kind of place where truckers, retirees, and young families all shared the same space, where people still talked to each other instead of staring at their phones. Before she could respond, the cook rang the bell, signaling that his order was ready. "Be right back," she said, turning toward the kitchen. As she placed the steaming plate of meatloaf and mashed potatoes in front of him, Vance inhaled the aroma with appreciation. "Now this," he said, "smells like home." Emily grinned. "Then I hope it tastes like it too." She left him to his meal, occasionally stealing glances as he ate. He didn't rush, didn't seem distracted by his phone or the occasional stares from other patrons. He just enjoyed the food. After about 20 minutes, Vance set his fork down, stretched back slightly, and exhaled with satisfaction. "Best meal I've had in weeks," he said, catching Emily's eye. She felt a swell of pride. "Glad to hear it." He reached for the check, and she handed it to him with a polite smile. "Take your time, sir." Vance nodded, pulled out his wallet, and scribbled something on the receipt. As she walked away, she didn't notice the way his expression softened, as if he knew the weight that small note carried. It wasn't until she picked up the check a few minutes later that she saw the handwritten message at the bottom. Her breath caught in her throat. And then, just like that, tears filled her eyes. Emily's fingers trembled as she picked up the receipt, her eyes scanning the handwritten note scribbled beneath the total. For your kindness and hard work, never stop believing in yourself. I know what it's like to struggle, but I also know what it's like to overcome. Keep pushing forward. J.D. Vance. Her vision blurred as tears welled up in her eyes. But then she noticed something even more shocking. The tip amount, $5,000. She nearly dropped the check. Her breath came in short, uneven gasps. This had to be a mistake. $5,000? For her? She looked up, her heart pounding. But Vance was already standing near the door, slipping his coat on. Without thinking, she rushed forward, weaving past tables and startled customers. Sir, wait. He turned back, his expression calm yet knowing. Yes. She hesitated, struggling to find the right words. I think there's a mistake on the check. He gave her a small smile. No mistake. Emily shook her head. This is too much. I can't accept this. Vance glanced around, then leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. Emily, I've been where you are. I grew up in a place like this. I know what it's like to work hard and still feel like you're running in place. She swallowed hard, barely able to speak. I'm not giving you a handout, he continued. I'm giving you a chance to breathe, maybe even chase a dream or two. Emily's lower lip trembled. She hadn't allowed herself to think about dreams in years. She had spent so long just trying to survive, to make sure her mom and brother were okay, that she had forgotten what it felt like to imagine anything else. Vance placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression earnest. One day, when you're in a position to do the same for someone else, pass it on. That's all I ask. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded once, then stepped out the door, leaving Emily standing there, gripping the check as if it were the most valuable thing in the world. And to her, in that moment, it was. Emily stood frozen at the entrance of the Copper Fork, the check still clutched tightly in her hands. The diner's usual noise, clinking silverware, quiet conversations, the occasional laughter, felt like a distant hum compared to the storm of emotions swirling inside her. $5,000. It wasn't just a tip, it was a lifeline. Her coworker, Mara, a fellow waitress and longtime friend, approached cautiously. Em? What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost. Emily turned toward her, still in shock. He left me $5,000. Mara's jaw dropped. What? The vice president? Emily nodded slowly and handed her the check. Mara's eyes darted between the handwritten note and the tip amount before she let out a low whistle. Holy crap! Emily wiped at her wet cheeks, still overwhelmed. What am I supposed to do with this? Mara shot her a look. What do you mean? You cash that check, Em. You pay your bills. Take a day off. Do something for yourself for once. But that was just it. Emily didn't know how to think about herself. Every dollar she earned went to rent, groceries, and medical bills for her mom. Her younger brother, Jason, was in his last year of high school, and she had been scraping together whatever she could to help him apply for college. $5,000 could change everything. It could mean an end to the constant stress of barely making it to the next paycheck. Could mean helping Jason start his future. Could mean finally giving her mother the care she needed. And maybe, just maybe, it could mean something for her too. Mara nudged her gently. Listen, girl. If anyone deserves this, it's you. You work harder than anyone I know. Emily exhaled shakily. I don't know what to do next. Mara smirked. Well, first, you take the rest of the day off before you pass out. I'll cover for you. Emily blinked. I can't just leave. Yes, you can, Mara insisted. Go home. Tell your family. Let this sink in. Emily hesitated for a moment before nodding. Maybe Mara was right. Maybe, for once, she could take a moment for herself. With the check still gripped in her hand, she grabbed her coat and stepped out into the crisp autumn air, unaware that this was only the beginning of something much bigger. Emily's hands were still shaking as she pulled into the driveway of her small, two-bedroom home on the outskirts of Cincinnati. The house wasn't much, just a modest place with peeling paint and a cracked front step, but it was home. It was where she had spent the last 5 years keeping her family together after her dad passed away. She took a deep breath before stepping inside. Her mother, Linda, sat in the living room, wrapped in a knitted blanket, sipping tea. The lines on her face were deeper these days, a testament to the chronic illness that had drained their savings and forced Emily to take on extra shifts. "Hey, sweetheart," Linda said with a tired smile. "You're home early." Emily swallowed hard and sat down beside her. "Mom, something happened today." Linda's brows knitted together. "What is it? Are you okay?" Emily pulled out the check and placed it on the coffee table. "The vice president came into the diner today." Linda blinked. "Wait, J.D. Vance?" Emily nodded. "And he left me a tip." Linda picked up the receipt and squinted at the number. The second she processed it, her eyes widened. "Oh my God." Just then, the front door swung open, and Jason, Emily's 17-year-old brother, walked in, tossing his backpack onto the floor. "Hey, what's going on?" Linda, still in shock, handed him the check. Jason's eyes nearly popped out of his head. "Holy crap, Em. $5,000. What did you do?" "Save his life." Emily let out a small, breathy laugh. "I don't know. I just did my job. But he saw something in me, I guess." Jason flopped onto the couch, staring at the check like it was a golden ticket. "So, what are we gonna do with it?" That was the question, wasn't it? Emily sighed. "I want to help with Mom's medical bills. And Jason, this could cover your college applications." Jason hesitated. "Yeah, but this is your money. You should use some of it for yourself." Emily opened her mouth to argue, but then she stopped. For the first time in years, she could think about herself. A thought crept into her mind, something she had buried long ago. What if she went back to school? She had always dreamed of studying business, maybe even opening her own cafe one day. But life had thrown her too many curveballs, and she had pushed those dreams aside. Now, for the first time in forever, it felt possible. Linda reached over and took her daughter's hand. "Whatever you decide, honey, just know you deserve this." Emily blinked back tears. For so long, she had been surviving. Maybe now it was time to start living. That night, Emily lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The check sat on her nightstand, a silent reminder that everything had changed. For years, she had told herself that her dreams didn't matter, that there wasn't time for them, that she had too many responsibilities to even consider going back to school. But now, for the first time, she had a choice. She reached for her phone and opened the website for Cincinnati State College. It had been her dream school before life got in the way. She had even started an application once, years ago, before she dropped out of the process to work full-time. Her fingers hovered over the screen as she scrolled through the programs. Business administration, entrepreneurship, hospitality management. Her heart pounded. Could she really do this? Would she have the time? Would it even be worth it? A part of her still felt guilty. She had always put her family first. But wasn't this money meant to help her too? She thought about what J.D. Vance had said. One day, when you're in a position to do the same for someone else, pass it on. If she went back to school, she could build a future where she wasn't just waiting tables for survival. She could create something meaningful not just for herself, but for her family. She took a deep breath and clicked on the request information button. It was a small step, but it was a step. The next morning, Emily woke up feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. After making breakfast for her mom and Jason, she grabbed her purse and headed back to the diner. The morning rush was already in full swing when she stepped inside. Mara spotted her immediately. "So, what's the plan, millionaire?" Emily laughed. "Not a millionaire. Just lucky." Mara raised an eyebrow. "You gonna spend it all on bills?" Emily hesitated. "Some of it. But I'm also looking into going back to school." Mara's eyes lit up. "For real?" Emily nodded. I don't know how I'll balance everything, but I think I have to try. Mara grinned and smacked a coffee pot onto the counter. Damn right you do. You've been taking care of everyone else for years. It's about time you did something for yourself. Emily smiled. For the first time in a long time, she actually believed that. As she tied her apron and got back to work, she couldn't help but feel like something bigger was at play. J.D. Vance had walked into the Copper Fork like any other customer. But in a single moment, he had changed her entire life. And deep down, she knew this was just the beginning. The next few days passed in a blur. Emily worked her shifts as usual, but something had shifted inside her. For the first time in years, she wasn't just going through the motions. She had a plan. One evening, after putting her mother to bed, she sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open. Her heart pounded as she stared at the college application she had started filling out the night before. Jason sat across from her, munching on a bag of chips. So, are you actually gonna do it? Emily sighed. I don't know. It feels scary. Jason smirked. You know what else was scary? That time you taught me how to drive and I almost took out Mrs. Henderson's mailbox. Emily groaned. Oh my God. Don't remind me. Jason chuckled. But you still let me practice, right? 'Cause you believed I could get better. She arched an eyebrow. Are you saying I should treat my future like a bad driving lesson? Hey, I got my license, didn't I? He winked. Look, Em, you've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. This is your turn. Emily swallowed hard. Could it really be that simple? She took a deep breath, then moved the cursor to the submit application button. Her finger hovered over it. Then click. The confirmation message popped up on the screen. Jason whooped. Let's go. My sister's going back to school. Emily laughed, half from excitement, half from sheer disbelief. It was done. She had taken the leap. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't just waiting for life to happen to her. She was making it happen. A week later, Emily was in the middle of refilling a coffee cup at the Copper Fork when her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She pulled it out and nearly dropped the coffee pot. Cincinnati State College, application status update. Her hands trembled as she opened the email. Dear Ms. Carter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted. She slapped a hand over her mouth. Mara, who had been taking an order nearby, noticed her reaction. What happened? Emily looked up, her eyes wide. I got in. Mara's face lit up. Holy! She caught herself before shouting and grabbed Emily's arms. Girl, that's amazing. Emily was in shock. She had dreamed about this moment, but now that it was real, it almost felt too good to be true. But then she thought about J.D. Vance's note. He had told her to believe in herself. And maybe, just maybe, it was time she did. Emily was still floating from the excitement of her acceptance when her manager, Frank, called her into his office later that day. She wiped her hands on her apron and stepped inside, her stomach twisting. Hey Frank, everything okay? Frank, a gruff but kind-hearted man in his 50s, leaned back in his chair, eyeing her with a strange expression. Got a call today. Thought you might want to know about it. Emily frowned. A call? From who? Frank smirked and slid his phone across the desk. Some guy from the vice president's office. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Wait, what? Frank chuckled. Said J.D. Vance wanted to check in on you. Emily's legs nearly gave out. Are you serious? Dead serious. Frank folded his arms. They asked if they could get in touch with you directly. I told them I'd pass the message along. Emily's mind raced. Why would the vice president want to check on her? He had already done so much. Why would he care what happened after that day? Frank raised an eyebrow. You want me to give Em your number? Emily hesitated for only a second before nodding. Yes, please. Frank grinned. Didn't think I'd ever be passing messages to the White House. But here we are. Later that evening, Emily was home, nervously pacing the living room when her phone rang. The caller ID read, unknown number. She took a deep breath and answered. Hello. A smooth, professional voice spoke on the other end. Hi, is this Emily Carter? Yes, this is Emily. This is Michael Reynolds, personal assistant to Vice President J.D. Vance. Mr. Vance asked me to reach out because he wanted to see how you were doing. Emily's heart pounded. Oh wow. Please tell him I said thank you, again. What he did. It changed my life. Michael chuckled. Well, actually, Mr. Vance was hoping to tell you that himself. Do you have a moment? Emily's breath hitched. Wait, what? There was a brief pause before another voice. His voice came through the phone. Emily? It's J.D. Vance. She nearly dropped the phone. I'm here, sir, she stammered. J.D. laughed. Good to hear your voice again. Listen, I just wanted to check in. My wife and I were talking about you the other night, and we were wondering, what did you do with the money? Emily swallowed hard. Well, sir, I paid off some bills, helped my family, but I also used it to apply to college. And I got in. There was a pause. Then JD's voice warmed with approval. That's incredible, Emily. I'm so proud of you. Emily felt tears sting her eyes. I wouldn't have been able to do it without your kindness. Well, JD said, I have a feeling you would have found a way. But listen, I want to help a little more. Emily's breath caught. Help more. J.D. Vance's voice was steady. How about we cover your first semester's tuition? Emily nearly collapsed. Emily gripped the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Sir, I don't even know what to say. J.D. Vance chuckled. Just say yes, Emily. Consider it an investment. Not just in you, but in what you'll do with it someday. Tears welled up in her eyes. This kind of thing didn't happen to people like her. Hardworking waitresses didn't just get their college tuition covered by the Vice President of the United States. She swallowed the lump in her throat. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. Good, JD said. My assistant, Michael, will be in touch to work out the details. And Emily? Yes, you're going to do great things. I believe in you. The line went dead, but Emily stood frozen, phone still pressed to her ear. Did that really just happen? Jason, who had been eavesdropping from the hallway, sprinted into the room. What the hell was that? Emily let out a choked laugh. That was the Vice President of the United States telling me he's paying for my first semester of college. Jason's jaw dropped. Are you freaking kidding me? Before she could answer, her mother shuffled into the living room, looking groggy but concerned. Why are you two yelling? Jason turned to her, eyes wide. Mom, Emily's going to college. And J.D. Vance is paying for it. Linda's tired face crumpled as she clutched a hand to her chest. Oh, sweetheart. Emily rushed to her mother's side, and they collapsed into each other's arms, sobbing. It wasn't just about the money. It wasn't even about college. It was about the fact that for the first time in their lives, things were changing for the better. A week later, a new beginning. Emily stood on the campus of Cincinnati State College, clutching her backpack. She was officially a college student. The check from J.D. Vance had been wired directly to the school, covering every last penny of her tuition. She still had to juggle work, but now she had a future. A real, tangible future. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. J.D. Vance. Heard today's your first day. You got this. Emily grinned. She had been a waitress, a daughter, caretaker. Now she was a student. And maybe, just maybe, one day she would be the one leaving life-changing notes on a receipt. She shouldered her backpack and walked into her future.